I liked how we balanced each other out. My husband David cracks jokes when the car breaks down. My son Tommy bounces off walls when he's nervous. I'm the one who keeps us all grounded, the steady hand that seeks solutions while chaos spins around us. Moving day was no different. Boxes were everywhere. Tommy wondered where his action figures should go. Our cat Mittens was hiding under whatever furniture we'd managed to place. David was going on about our next adventure, while I worked out what actually needed to happen before bedtime. The mortgage company had given us the keys 3 days ago, but David's idealism wouldn't get Tommy registered for school or put food in our new refrigerator. "Sarah, relax," he said, watching me dig through a box full of kitchen supplies. "We've got weeks to settle in. We've got 4 days until Tommy starts second grade, at a new school, mind you." I set the Instant Pot on the top shelf of the pantry. He needs routine, structure. David just smiled and went back to unpacking his hundreds of records. Priorities. The house itself was a compromise we'd made after months of searching. Built in 1953, it had the character David wanted and the practical layout I insisted on. 3 bedrooms, finished basement, and a decent yard for Tommy to run around in. The previous owners, an older couple, had moved to assisted living after 40-ish years living here. Their realtor mentioned they might have left some things behind. I hadn't found anything yet. I'd researched the neighborhood thoroughly, of course. Solid schools, low crime rates, property values going nowhere but up. The kind of place where families put down roots and stayed for decades. David liked to tease me about my Excel spreadsheet and tireless research on Zillow, but someone had to think about these decisions. The basement became my project that first weekend. David would have just stacked boxes down there and called it organized. I was going to try my hand at one of those DIY storage systems I saw online. Measure the space, categorize by frequency of use, and make it all work together. That's when I found the trunk. A heavy thing shoved behind the furnace like someone had deliberately hidden it. It was well made and definitely an antique. The kind of piece that might actually be worth something at an estate sale. Brass corners, leather straps worn smooth by decades of use, with intricate metalwork around a bulky brass lock. The wood was dark with age, maybe walnut or mahogany, and it smelled faintly of old cloth and something else I couldn't put my finger on. It was musty and stale. There was no key for the lock, though. "You found a truck down there?" David hollered from the kitchen when I called for him. I heard Tommy giggle. "A trunk?" I rolled my eyes and rubbed dust from the trunk's surface, leaving clean streaks across the wood. "This must be what the realtor was talking about." "Probably just old Christmas decorations or something. Let's just deal with it later." I'll give it to him. David made a good point. Boxes needed unpacking. Tommy had a school supply list that was a mile long, and there was the most pressing matter at that moment. Dinner. The trunk could wait, along with whatever forgotten secrets it held locked inside. During our first night, Tommy was nervous about the new sounds, the way old houses creak and settle differently than apartments. But I tucked him in and explained how buildings talk to themselves as they age. "Everything's fine, baby. It's just the house getting used to us." I've always been good at being the voice of reason, at smoothing over the rough edges of change. It's a skill you develop as a project manager, keeping teams focused while client needs shifted and timelines turned on a dime. David calls it my superpower, but sometimes I think he means it as an insult. Things got interesting around 2 in the morning. There were some bumping sounds downstairs. Then Tommy appeared in our doorway, hair sticking up wildly. "There's something downstairs, Mommy." David stirred, but didn't actually wake up. His sleep apnea makes him a heavy sleeper once he's out. I took Tommy's small hand and walked him down to investigate. Parents sacrifice precious sleep to check for monsters that don't exist. It's part of the job description. Found our magazine rack overturned in the living room. Mittens sat nearby, her tail twitching and ears back, wearing an unhinged, guilty expression only cats can manage. Look, I stifled a yawn. It's just Mittens checking out her brand new home. Besides, cats act out when they're stressed or bored. Tommy smiled, satisfied with this explanation. I tucked him back in, feeling like I'd successfully parented through our first minor crisis. The next morning, I returned to the basement. That's when I discovered the trunk standing wide open, its brass lock hanging loose. David, did you open that trunk? He looked up from his coffee and from the free or for sale section of his newspaper, already planning some project of his own. What trunk? The locked one I told you about yesterday, in the basement. I haven't even been down there yet. Why would I want to mess with some old box? His casual dismissal irritated me. Yeah, moving sucks and is stressful for everyone, but we're still supposed to be partners through it. I felt like I was handling every detail that really mattered by myself. I made the school registration appointment, set up all the utilities, and unpacked essentials while he focused on just bopping around the house doing God knows what. Inside the trunk, I found deep scratch marks gouged into the wood, long, desperate furrows like something had been clawing to escape. There were no Christmas decorations, stored linens, or family heirlooms. Just those scratches and a smell that reminded me of wet leaves and something metallic. Probably a rat, I told myself, running my fingers along the scratches. Got trapped inside somehow. I don't know. The marks looked fresh though, raw wood showing through decades of accumulated patina, as if they'd been made recently. Tommy spent the next few days mapping out his new territory, the way kids do, exploring the house from top to bottom, looking for the best places to play. He'd always been good at adapting, better than me, honestly. Guess that's the bit of David in him. While I needed lists and plans to feel secure, Tommy could walk into any situation and find his place naturally. I found him in the basement that afternoon, poking around the storage area I was working, his brow furrowed a bit. What you up to down here, sweetie? Just looking. He gave me his innocent smile that usually preceded some sort of mischief. Can I play down here sometimes? Sure, but stay away from the furnace when it's running. It can get real hot real fast. And if you find anything dangerous, come get me or Daddy, okay? He smiled and nodded solemnly, then bounded back upstairs. His attention had already shifted to whatever adventure awaited in his bedroom. That night brought a louder disturbance. Tommy stayed in bed, thankfully, but this time David woke up. He grumbled about how we should call someone. Call who about what? Mittens knocking things over downstairs. When he and I investigated together, we couldn't find any evidence of a feline fiasco. We couldn't even find Mittens. I noticed the basement door was ajar and started connecting the dots. I think the cat's just playing down there, I sighed, though the open basement door wasn't sitting right with me. I made my way down the wooden stairs, flipping the switch that cast weak yellow light across the basement. The single bulb didn't do much to illuminate the corners, surrounding the room in a dull frame of shadows. Mittens suddenly streaked between my legs and up the stairs like she'd been shot from a cannon, her claws scrambling for grip on the wooden steps. This freaking cat, I muttered, turning to follow her up. That's when I noticed the trunk, locked again, the brass lock gleaming as if freshly polished. David, I whispered as we settled back into bed. Are you lying to me about that trunk? Because this is a really stupid thing to lie about. What are you talking about? It's locked again. I'm not messing with you. If it's not you locking it, then who? Sarah, I promise you, I haven't touched that thing. Can we please just get some sleep? I started checking the basement every morning. Sometimes the trunk was locked, sometimes it was open. The scratches inside grew deeper each time I found it open, as if whatever had made them was growing more desperate. Project manager part of me kicked in, and I began keeping a small notebook, documenting what I saw. Monday, locked. Tuesday, open. New scratches on the left wall. Wednesday, locked. Thursday, open. Scratches deeper, extending to the right wall. David found my notebook once and looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Honey, this is a little much, don't you think?" "What? It's what I do at work when there's a problem. I pay attention." "It's a box, Sarah. An old wooden box. Maybe rats are getting stuck in there or something." I couldn't let it go. In my professional life, unexplained problems always had rational solutions. Malfunctions had causes. Failures had triggers. Like Occam's razor, you know? This trunk was just another puzzle to solve. After her fun in the basement, it became clear that Mittens wasn't having a smooth adjustment. During the day, she cowered under the living room couch, emerging only when we rattled her food bowl. At night, she hid in our bedroom closet, fur standing on end whenever we tried to coax her out. David acted like I was overreacting to normal pet stress. "She's just figuring things out. Just give her time." Mittens had always been pretty easygoing. She moved with us twice before without this kind of behavior. Something about this house was different. Tommy seemed fine, though. Better than fine, actually. He had a nice bedroom, but claimed the basement as his primary play area. He was bringing action figures and toy cars down there for hours-long adventures. I was relieved to see him adjusting so well, especially since starting at a new school could be stressful for kids his age. I went to call him for lunch one afternoon when I heard his voice drifting up the stairs. He wasn't doing the voices for his action figures. The tone was different from his usual imaginative play, more like he was responding to someone else, like actual conversation. "Anyone else down there with you, Tommy?" "My friend." "What friend?" "The one who lives here." My stomach tightened a bit, but I kept my cool. "Sweetie, we're the only ones who live here." "I know, but he was here first." So we'd entered the imaginary friend phase. No big deal. Kids are little weirdos sometimes. I had an invisible grandpa growing up. He lived in between the ceiling and the attic and gave me advice about dealing with my friends and my parents. Maybe I'll bring it up during his next checkup. "So what do you and your friend play?" "Hide and seek mostly. Sometimes we'll play with my wrestlers, but he's just really good at hiding games." "Not a lot of places to hide down there." "Yeah, he's really good at it." Something about Tommy's certainty unsettled me, but I couldn't pinpoint why. The conviction in his voice was different from typical childhood fantasy. A lot more matter-of-fact, way less whimsical. "Well, come upstairs for lunch." The next morning, I found Mittens in the backyard. Dead. Bite marks punctured her neck and legs. Her throat had been torn open. Chunks of flesh were missing from her torso. Blood stained the grass beneath her small body in the grass, already congealing in the morning light. I stood there for a long moment, trying to process what I was seeing. How was this even possible? Mittens was an indoor cat, and how did we all sleep through this in the first place? David actually put his bubbly personality aside and helped me gather Mittens, wrapping her in an old beach towel. We agreed to tell Tommy that the cat had gotten outside and that she might come back, and that these things happen with indoor cats when they miss where they used to live. Tommy's reaction bothered me. When he shuffled downstairs for breakfast and we broke the news gently, he wasn't surprised. A 7-year-old should be devastated when his pet disappears. Tommy just nodded and asked if we could get a new cat someday. "Maybe," I said, studying his face for any sign of grief. "We'll see." He went back to eating his cereal like nothing had happened, humming quietly to himself. I checked the trunk after breakfast. It was locked tight, but when I examined it more carefully, I couldn't find any opening large enough for an animal to squeeze through. No gaps in the construction, no hidden panels, just solid wood and metal, crafted by someone who knew their trade. In the basement silence, I heard faint scratching. I stood perfectly still, eyes scanning the room for the source. Maybe there's a hole somewhere, and that's how the cat got out. I waited. Then it hit me. The sound was coming from inside the trunk, rhythmic and deliberate, like Morse code. I stormed upstairs to find David on the couch next to Tommy, both watching Saturday morning cartoons. "David, we need to talk about the basement." "Sarah, please. If this is about that trunk again, you need to let it go. Maybe we should call pest control." "One of us is lying about it." "Neither of us is lying." "Then tell me the fucking truth, David." Tommy flinched when I raised my voice. David's expression shifted to something between concern and exasperation. "Sarah," he sighed, clearly trying to rein me in. "Have you tried asking him?" David nodded toward our son. It hadn't occurred to me. Kids are natural treasure hunters. They poke around, they dig into stuff. If there was a way to get that trunk open, and with how much time he's been spending in the basement, Tommy would know about it. "Tommy, honey, have you been playing with the trunk in the basement?" He paused. "What's a trunk?" "The big wooden box down in the basement, sweetie, with the lock on it." There was another pause, this one longer. I watched his face carefully, noting the slight tension around his eyes, the way he balled his hands into small fists for a moment. "Nope." The pattern continued over the following week. The trunk was locked, unlocked, then locked again. David and I fought about it constantly. He thought I was having some kind of breakdown from moving stress. I thought he was protecting Tommy from getting in trouble for lying. "This paranoid shit's gotta stop, Sarah," David announced during another fight that went nowhere. "Someone in this house, in this family, is lying to me. Sarah, listen to yourself. The Orkin guy said, 'No, screw the exterminator, and screw you too.' What's going on here? You're acting like what, David? Remember our cat being killed? Murdered?" I couldn't stop snapping at him. I felt like I was losing my grip on everything I'd once controlled so well. The move was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance for us to build something better. I was turning into someone I didn't recognize instead. Then Tommy's teacher called me one Tuesday afternoon.
"Mrs. McMillan, this is Carol Dawson, Tommy's teacher. I wanted to discuss how Tommy's settling into his new school."
My stomach clenched. "Is there a problem?"
"I wouldn't call this a problem, but he talks quite a bit about his friend at home. The other children find it different."
"It's just an imaginary friend."
"Of course. Tommy just insists this friend is real. Very real. The details he provides are quite elaborate and, to be honest, a bit concerning for his classmates."
I rubbed my temples, a headache coming on. "What kind of details?"
"He says his friend lives in your basement and only comes out at night. He describes elaborate games they play together, but some of the other children find the descriptions frightening."
I didn't understand why adjusting to a new house and school had to be more complicated than it needed to be. "I'll talk to him about keeping his imagination separate from school time."
"That might be best, for everyone. Perhaps you could also speak with your pediatrician about healthy ways to process the stress of moving."
After hanging up, I found Tommy in the basement as usual. "Hey kiddo, we need to talk." He came to the foot of the stairs and looked up expectantly, his face innocent and open. "Your teacher says you've been telling kids at school about playing with your friend down here." "Yeah. It sounds like they don't understand imaginary friends. Maybe try keeping that stuff at home?" "Okay." Tommy glanced over his shoulder toward the basement, then back at me. "He's not imaginary, though." "Tommy, yes he is. There's no one else in this house. You want to come see?" I wasn't sure how to respond. He looked over his shoulder again, then met my eyes with something that might have been pity.
He's here right now, Mommy.
I swallowed hard and made my way down into the basement. A couple of action figures lay scattered on the floor. Tommy's water bottle sat on a cardboard box, and the trunk stood open, its brass lock hanging loose. I turned to ask him if it had been unlocked when he came down, but I saw Tommy wearing an expression of pure wonder, his eyes searching the shadowy corners of the basement.
How does he hide so fast like that, Mommy?
He smiled with genuine delight. Things shifted after that conversation. I started watching Tommy more carefully, noting how he'd sprint between the basement and his bedroom like he was running messages between two separate worlds. One afternoon, I heard him call out from downstairs.
Hey, that's not fair.
I jumped, nearly dropping the laundry I was folding. Tommy?
That's cheating.
He sounded genuinely angry, like how he did when other kids broke the rules during playground games. I hurried to the basement to find Tommy standing beside the open trunk, hands on his hips, addressing empty air with the indignation of someone who'd been wronged.
You know that's not how you play the game. Tommy?
He spun around, startled.
Oh, hi, Mommy. What's happening down here? Why are you yelling? We're playing hide and seek, but he keeps cheating. He won't stay in the basement.
Tommy pointed at the trunk.
He's supposed to stay by Dad, but he keeps going upstairs.
That night, I caught Tommy sneaking back upstairs from the basement. I hadn't slept well in days. David's sleep apnea didn't help either. I was sipping water in the kitchen when the basement door creaked open. My heart nearly stopped as Tommy emerged, covered in grime like he'd been rolling around on the basement floor.
Tommy,
I whispered sharply.
What are you doing out of bed?
He jumped, eyes wide with guilt.
Nothing. You're filthy. What were you doing down there? Just looking at stuff. Stuff? Show me.
I followed him downstairs and found the trunk open again. In the bottom of the trunk, a small handprint marked the accumulated dust. Too small to be mine or David's, perfectly sized for a 7-year-old's.
Tommy, did you put your hand in here?
He nodded reluctantly.
Why? My friend wanted to show me something. What kind of something? How to pretend to be someone else.
Something about Tommy's expression stopped me from pressing. He looked scared for the first time since we'd moved in, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked almost like guilt.
Tommy, has your friend ever hurt you? No, he likes me, but...
Tommy hesitated, chewing his lower lip the way he did when he was working up courage to confess something.
But... I think he's getting lonely. He wants more friends to play with.
That night, David and I had our worst fight yet.
This has gone too far,
he said, pacing our bedroom.
Pretend to be someone else? Tommy's obviously confused about something, and your obsession with that trunk is making everything worse. I'm not obsessed. I'm trying to understand what's happening to our son. It's a box, Sarah. An old wooden box that some old people left behind when they moved out. Why does it keep unlocking itself?
David stared at me like I'd suggested we were living in a fairy tale.
Listen to what you just said. I know how it sounds. Do you? Because it's like you think our house is haunted or something.
The word floated in the air between us for a moment. Haunted. I'd been avoiding it, dancing around the implications of what I'd been witnessing. I don't know what to think anymore. Maybe we should talk to someone, a counselor. This stress from moving, starting over, it isn't moving stress. Stop calling it that. Then what is it? What do you think is happening here? I couldn't answer him. How do you explain that your house just doesn't feel right? That your pet was killed, and that your son is talking to someone who isn't there? How do you say those things out loud without sounding insane? The next morning, I made a decision. I stopped using my notebook to keep track of what I saw. Now I was going to sit in that basement and watch that trunk until I understood what was happening. No more second-hand reports, no more speculating. I told David I was doing inventory. I told Tommy I was organizing. Neither questioned it. I sat on an old folding chair and stared at the trunk for 3 hours. Nothing happened. My back ached, my eyes burned, and I felt foolish for expecting supernatural events to perform on schedule. The basement door creaked open, and Tommy came downstairs. "Mommy, what are you doing?" "Just organizing some things." "You're watching the trunk." It's okay. My friend says you've been curious about him." Something cold traveled down my spine. "Your friend said that?" Tommy nodded seriously. "He thinks you might want to meet him." "Tommy, there's no one there." "He's there right now. Maybe if you asked nicely, he'd come out so you could see him." I stood up quickly, the chair scraping against the ground. "Tommy, we're going upstairs, now." "But Mommy!" "Now, Thomas Macmillan." That evening, I cornered David in the kitchen while he loaded the dishwasher. "We need to get rid of that trunk." "Fine, sure. I'll take it to the dump this weekend." "No, tonight. Right now." David looked at me like I'd suggested we burn the house down. "Babe, it's almost midnight." "Then we'll just drop it on the curb." "What's the problem? Why right now?" I couldn't explain the urgency clawing at my chest, the certainty that waiting even one more day would be a mistake we couldn't undo. "I just want it gone." He sighed. "Let's go then." The trunk wouldn't budge. David and I both tried lifting it, pushing it, rocking it back and forth. It felt impossibly heavy, like it had been bolted to the basement floor. When I'd examined it before, I could at least move it slightly. "I don't know. What the hell?" David panted, sweat beading on his forehead despite the basement's cool temperature. "I'll rent a dolly tomorrow or something. Maybe get some guys from work to help." The next few days were oddly quiet. I don't know what happened, but Tommy suddenly stopped talking about his friend. No more whispered conversations drifting up from the basement. No more racing between floors. Now we couldn't get Tommy out of his bedroom. Someone seemed to have flipped a switch and returned him to normal 7-year-old behavior. "See?" David said smugly over dinner. "Whatever was bothering Tommy worked itself out." There was no relief, though. I felt like I was waiting for something terrible to happen, for the other shoe to drop. I couldn't stay out of the basement. I spent hours down there watching the trunk. Tommy would bring me fruit snacks. David would just stand at the foot of the stairs, staring at me with his hands in his pockets. Through it all, the trunk would remain the same, still locked, still immovable. This round-the-clock vigilance was exhausting me, and I was grateful when my body let its guard down and let me rest. That night, I had just drifted off to sleep when the bedroom door creaked open. My eyes shot open. I watched Tommy's silhouette shuffle to my side of the bed. Something was setting off every maternal alarm I had. "Mommy?" Tommy whispered, sitting down beside me. "I can't sleep. It's too loud in my room." David stirred beside me. I sat up and pulled Tommy closer, his small body trembling. "What do you mean, too loud, baby?" "It's being too loud." Tommy burrowed against my side. "I asked it to be quiet, but it won't listen anymore." It. No longer a he. It. "My friend. I thought it was my friend, but now I don't know." Tommy looked up at me. "It said it was an angel when I first found it." David sat up. "Tommy, what are you talking about?" "I found a key in my closet, and there was that big box in the basement Mommy found, the trunk. So I used the key to open it, and that's when my friend came out." Tommy stumbled. It said it had been waiting for a friend like me. My pulse hammered. When was this, Tommy? When we first moved in. It told me it was a special secret, for friends only. It wanted to play games. And what did you two play? Hide and seek, remember? It's really good at hiding. It likes how the dark makes it harder to find it. Tommy picked at the comforter. It was quiet at first, so we wouldn't get in trouble. But it's not quiet anymore. You're not in trouble, baby. And then it wanted to play with mittens too, but... He trailed off into a quiet whimper. My heart crashed into my stomach. Tommy, where is your friend now? In my room. I wanted to sleep, but it wanted to play. I said no, and I said I was sorry, but I don't think it liked that. I think it's mad at me. Tommy sniffled. I don't think it wants to be my friend anymore. Get under the covers, I instructed, and stay put. Tommy climbed into the bed. I stood up, and David followed. I tried to reason with myself. They were in a new house. Of course Tommy would be frightened. Nightmares are so vivid when you're little, after all. But then why was I so scared too? We moved quietly down the hall toward Tommy's room. The door was closed, an ominous white monolith in the dark. I took a breath and reached to open it. Something stirred behind the door, like an animal quickly scurrying from danger. My hand hung in the air for a moment. I turned to look at David, his eyes boring holes into the door. Mommy? Tommy's muffled voice emerged from behind the door. Daddy? My chest tightened. My mouth hung open in disbelief. There was more shuffling behind the door. Something clattered to the floor in Tommy's bedroom. Then it was quiet. Tommy's sweet voice drifted through the night again. Is that you out there, Mommy? I turned to David. Even in the darkness, I could see his face had turned a pale white. My eyes began to tear up. I took a shallow breath. It's Mummy, yes. Daddy's here too. I want to play. Do you and Daddy want to come play? David stepped forward. I put a hand out to stop him. I decided it was my responsibility to confront whatever stood behind that door. We'll come play, baby. I placed my hand on the knob. I looked at David one last time. He nodded. I gripped the knob, then felt it begin to turn on its own. Whatever was on the other side didn't want to wait any longer. The door slowly swung open. Tommy's bedroom was dark. The blackout curtains submerged the space in an all-encompassing blackness. I stood in the doorway, eyes adjusting. Soon, scattered toys revealed themselves on the bedroom floor. Tommy's comforter sat crumpled beside the bed. In the far corner stood a man. He held perfectly still. I felt a tear trickle down my cheek. I tried to say something, but I could only manage a weak whimper. The man began walking toward me, slowly, deliberately. I couldn't move. I found myself gripping the doorframe. Behind me, I could hear David grabbing Tommy from our bed and sprinting down the stairs. The man was just steps away now. I was locked in place, terror consuming my being. I heard the front door open and slam shut downstairs. The world around me was silent. The man stood before me, my face just inches from his. The face looking deep into mine was slick, almost oily. The eyes were jaundiced. The lips were thin and cracked. I felt lightheaded. The man suddenly began to hyperventilate. I realized I was too. Our jagged and labored breathing moved in unison, our chests rising and falling in tandem. I finally felt something growing inside of me. The fear, the horror. It came crying out as a helpless scream. The man's eyes widened, like he was surprised by the act. He stopped mimicking me. He looked deep into my eyes, past the helpless gaze staring back at him, in search of the intangible source of my outburst. A look of understanding crept across his face. Then his mouth twisted into a smile.
I like when you do that.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to click subscribe and check out some more stories here.